Good morning, everybody. New South Wales overnight, thank you to the 16,400 people who came forward to get tested. We had 5 cases overnight, 4 of which are in hotel quarantine and 1 is community transmission. The 1 case is linked to an existing cluster in Lakemba, which is positive. However, we have had a couple of cases overnight, which Dr Chant will talk about. So we are asking people during the day to monitor the New South Wales Health website and make sure, in particular, that they are in touch with all those organisations or all those venues which infected persons have been to, and that's really, really critical. I also want to say that pleasingly today there'll be 3 flights from New Zealand coming to New South Wales without those citizens having to go into hotel quarantine. So as far as the Trans-Tasman bubble is concerned, we're certainly starting that process from our end. We appreciate that when those travellers go back to New Zealand, they may have quarantine to do there, but it's a positive move, and I want to thank Dr Chant and the health experts for giving us those strict requirements to allow us to safely bring people in from New Zealand. Now, this is great news for tourism. It's also great news for family reunification and also great news for businesses. And Minister Hazzard will provide a bit further detail on the regimen or the detail we have around those arrangements to give everybody confidence that this is a safe thing to do and the right thing to do. I also wanted to remind the community that from today, for outdoor venues in New South Wales, the 2 square metre rule applies, which means that instead of having 4 square metre rules applying, residents or people attending hospitality venues are able to enjoy more people outdoors, and for businesses and jobs it is extremely positive. But the key thing, and some of my colleagues will be emphasising this further or later in the day, the key thing is to make sure that you are only allowed to go to the 2 square metre rule outdoors if you have a QR code. So we're saying to all businesses, if you either have your own electronic QR code or the Service New South Wales one, you will be able to have that restriction eased. In addition, we're also pleased that outdoor musical performances will also have increased number of people in participating in those events, whether they're the participants, the players, but also people watching those performances, which is great news for the arts sector. And I know so many people who are performers have suffered for months and months. Some have not worked for 7 months, in fact. And for them it's a huge relief to be able to now do what they do best, but also reinstate those jobs that unfortunately were put on hold during that time. I also want to foreshadow that if Dr Chant is happy with the number of cases we have over the weekend, we are and want to announce further easing of restrictions next week, but that will depend on how the case numbers go in the next few days. We did hold off on those. We were hoping to make some announcements yesterday and today, but we have held off on those given the number of community transmissions we've had this week. So I'll now ask Dr Chant to provide a detailed outline of the status of those cases that came in since 8 o'clock last night, and then Minister Hazzard will elaborate on the arrangements we have in relation to those quarantine provisions for New Zealanders. And we welcome New Zealanders, we welcome the Kiwis to our shores. It is a first important step in bringing back international travel, and we hope that Prime Minister Ardern returns the favour in the near future. So, Dr Chant.
Thank you, Premier. So as the Premier indicated, there were 5 new cases to 8 p.m. last night. 4 of those were overseas acquired in hotel quarantine and 1 was locally acquired and was linked to a known case or cluster. The 1 new locally acquired case is a household contact of a previously reported case linked to the Lakemba cluster. Overnight, we have had some cases coming in and we'll update you if there's anything relevant from a public health perspective. We have had some additional cases linked to the Great Beginnings Childcare Centre at Oran Park, and we will be contacting and recontacting families and staff at that childcare centre and provide additional advice. But I would ask anyone who is at that childcare centre to or immediately isolate. A number of people would have been advised to isolate, but we may be upgrading the advice for some of the casual contacts at that childcare centre, but Public Health will be reaching out to you immediately this morning. Also, people that have attended the A to Z medical clinic in Lakemba between the 25th of September to the 25th of September to the 2nd of October. We're requesting that you go forth and get tested. It is greater than 14 days since you were there, but please, we are suggesting you to get tested. And anyone who was attended between the 3rd to the 10th of October, we're asking you to get tested, isolate and remain in isolation, monitor for symptoms, get retested if any symptoms develop 14 days since you were last at that centre. And I just do want to acknowledge the local community and the response we've had around the testing request in that area. Thank you very much. Also, as I've indicated, we have been expanding the state's sewerage surveillance system, and we have had a detection in the treatment plant at Quakers Hill on the 13th of October. The plant serves Sydney's west and northwest, which includes some areas where there's recent cases, so that may be the explanation. But for the utmost caution, we are asking people in that area to come forward and get tested if they have any symptoms. Now, that advice about getting tested for symptoms applies across New South Wales, but we think that this additional information should continue to urge people in that area to come forward for testing. Also, there's some venues that are in Bargo and Campbelltown and Narellan Town Centre. These venues have been identified by what's called the upstream contact tracing, and that's why they are from a while ago. So through that upstream, we've identified other cases who were potentially infectious at particular points in time. So the 14 days has passed for many of these sites, but we have got specific advice in relation to these venues. So in terms of the Bargo Hotel on the Great Southern Road, Bargo, if you were there on the 26th of September 2020, between 7 p.m. to 9 p.m, patrons or staff who were there for an hour or more during this time are considered close contacts and must get tested regardless of symptoms. And patrons or staff who were there for less than 1 hour during this time are considered casual contacts and must be tested if they had any symptoms at all. Spotlight Plaza, 147 Queen Street, Campbelltown, including the Spotlight store, Gloria Jeans, on September the 26th between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Patrons or staff who were there for less than 1 hour during this time are considered casual contacts and must be tested should they have had any symptoms at all. And Narellan Town Centre on the 26th of September between 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Patrons or staff who were there for less than 1 hour during this time are considered casual contacts and must be tested should they have any symptoms at all. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Well, today is a great day. We're having the first flights in from New Zealand. Obviously, the New South Wales government has spent many months working through what they could do and what they couldn't do, but the New South Wales government has been keen to open up our economy at the same time as we're keeping people safe. We have worked extensively with the federal government, as would be required, because these are international flights. And as a result of the work of the state government and the federal government, the Australian government, there will be very clear delineation of the categories of people who can come into our state. Again, striking the balance between tourism, the economy and keeping our local community safe. As a result of those discussions with the federal government and the New Zealand government, people coming in, tourists coming in or visitors from New Zealand, will have to have been in New Zealand for at least 14 days. And when they arrive at the airport, they will have to complete a declaration which indicates their state of health, and they effectively will be screened at that end. When they arrive here in New South Wales at the international airport, again, they're under the control of the federal government, under the Border Force requirements, but it'll be very, very clear that they will be kept separate from any other international travellers arriving from across the world. Clearly, we have very strict rules on most international travellers, all except New Zealand. And those strict rules require that anybody coming in from overseas will go into hotel quarantine for 14 days. The New Zealand travellers, provided they have been in New Zealand for 14 days, provided they don't have symptoms, provided they complete their declaration, and provided they satisfy our health requirements at this end when they arrive, will be able to come straight out into our community and, of course, enjoy catching up with their family and friends and doing the business that we hope they'll do here in New South Wales. It's another confirmation that New South Wales is actually the gateway to the rest of the country, the rest of Australia. We welcome our Kiwi friends coming in. but we're also doing it in a very COVID-safe way. Again, thanks to the Commonwealth for the work they've done with Border Force, thanks for the work Border Force and Sydney Airport have done. I spoke personally to the General Manager of Sydney Airport a few days ago to make sure that as people enter in through the airport, there will be different channels, different ways in of those New Zealand travellers from the other travellers. And in fact, we'll also be keeping them separate from people coming from Victoria for the time being until Victoria does settle down its COVID situation. So it's a great win for New South Wales, and I'm sure it's a great win for New Zealand.
Premier, this evidence has again occurred at ICAC this morning. It's this conversation.
Can we just deal with the medical stuff first?
Can we
Dr.
stick with the
Chant?
COVID for a
And then
start
we'll deal with
rather
other
than
stuff,
rushing
Dr.
off on
Chant.
other things, please?
We just need to
Madam
get
Minister, Dr. Chant, so you mentioned cases at Great Beginnings overnight and A to Z that weren't included in the count. Can you say how many cases there have been post 8 p.m. and at Great Beginnings? Are we talking about children who have the virus?
We are, but I'll let Dr. Chant do the explanation.
So just in relation to the childcare centre, we've had a child and a staff member at that childcare centre. Now remember, we'd already alerted you to that childcare centre, people were on standby, but when we get another case at the childcare centre, it always is a time where we reflect on whether are there other people that may have been in contact, should people be upgraded from casual to close contacts. This is part of our routine. I do thank the staff and the families at that childcare centre, but we will be reaching out and having further discussions following these 2 cases overnight. In terms of the Lakemba GP practice, my comments were more to reinforce to anyone that those are the requirements in case anyone was attending that clinic and hadn't been already contacted by New South Wales Health.
So is it 2 new cases post 8
No, I haven't said there's any cases associated with it. My advice was more,
So not Lakemba,
but the childcare centre, 2 cases, yes.
Premier, this evidence, repeated again at ICAC this morning, this conversation with Daryl Maguire, you say, he says, William tells me we've done our deal, so hopefully that's about half of all that gone, referring to his $1.5 million debt, and you say, I don't need to know about that bit. Why did you say I don't need to know about that bit, Premier?
Oh, Mr. Clennell, I answered those questions during 6 hours of public evidence on Monday, so I refer you to that.
Daryl Maguire did say at the ICAC that there was information that you didn't want to know about. What was that information in relation to his activities?
Again, I spent 6 hours being very open and transparent, and I refer you to those comments there.
What was you open and transparent?
I'm sorry?
In lieu of that, the phone taps do show that Mr Maguire told you that he stands to make $1.5 million from a deal at Berejiklian that would clear his debt. He also said that he took Louise Waterhouse to your office to try and sort out a problem with her land across the road from Badgerys Creek. Can you, hand on heart right now, say you didn't know what he was up to?
Firstly, one of the facts in your question is actually incorrect, but in any event, hand on heart.
Which one?
Hand on
Which
heart.
one's incorrect, Premier?
Excuse me, hand on heart, I have done nothing wrong, and I refer everybody to my evidence on Monday. And I also say this, Mr Maguire was in Parliament for nearly 20 years. Many of us trusted him, and many of us have been let down by him.
In 2018,
I'm sorry?
New evidence has come forward today, so it's separate to what you said on Monday. He said there's information that you didn't want to know about in relation to his activities. What was that information you didn't want to know about?
Well, again, I refer you to my evidence on Monday. I'm not aware of what's happened this morning, but I say this. I've been supportive as a witness to the proceedings, and I'll continue to do so. I've been extremely open and transparent. I've done nothing wrong. I haven't been accused of doing anything wrong, and I just ask everybody to respect the process, let the ICAC do their job, and let them make sure that they get a thorough hearing of all the evidence today.
Premier, in
Did you
2018,
actively limit the amount of information that you knew about Daryl Maguire's business dealings?
I've already made that very clear, and absolutely not.
in 2009,
I'm sorry?
Was I don't need to know about that set in boredom or disinterest or to shield yourself from corrupt activity?
I actually made comments in relation to that during my public evidence, and I ask you to refer to those comments because they were very open and transparent, very honest, and I just ask you to refer to
in
those.
2018, he left Parliament because of corruption allegations. Why did you not go down to ICAC then, or have your lawyer write to ICAC and say, I've been with this man and I'm aware of his land deals. You are the Premier after all.
Can I just say this, that I have been absolutely overly cooperative with ICAC from the outset, and I will.
2018.
All I will say is this: you cannot disclose many of the proceedings that happen behind closed doors, but I will say this: that I've been overly
Did you
cooperative.
speak to them in 2018? Did you speak to them in 2018?
Again, I've said this, that it's important to respect the processes, and can I say this, it's really, really important, because if you breach any of the processes, it is not a good thing.
On
Did
any of the 18
you stand by your
days,
testimony that you gave on Monday that your relationship started in 2015?
What I will say is, whatever I've said openly and transparently is in the evidence on Monday.
Premier, how concerned are you that the ICAC released transcripts and tapes
Yeah.
concerning your personal details yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, suffice to state, it hasn't been pleasant, and unfortunately it didn't happen once but twice, and I accepted their apology this
do you
morning.
accept the telephone number concerned is now disconnected, so no one can contact you on it anymore?
I don't want to comment on that.
Premier, did Daryl Maguire at any stage tell you that the lobbying he was doing for Louise Waterhouse, that he was seeking to make a profit from that?
Oh, look, I've already made comment about that, and so has Ms Waterhouse, and I just ask you to refer to what's on the public record already.
Daryl said perhaps yes, he might have told you.
Well, I say please refer to the public record.
In
In
question
2018
time yesterday, you challenged the opposition leader to repeat her questions outside. Jodie McKay has done that. Will you take legal action against the opposition leader?
Oh, look, I'm just focused on doing my job for New South Wales, and can I say this? I appreciate what happened on Monday was shocking for people. I was very honest, very upfront, but my focus remains on the people of the state, and that's where my focus remains.
In 2018, you went 8 times to the Wagga Wagga by-election campaign. On any of those occasions, did you see Daryl Maguire? How many?
I have always conducted my official business officially, and I've made that distinction very clear. Private is private.
So you didn't
But
see
doing-
him? Are you
doing-
saying you didn't see him, Premier?
What I'm saying is that I've always conducted my business officially,
No, you're not answering the question, Premier, sorry. Are you
not to my recollection.
Premier, how confident are you that you will lead the Liberal Party for the next state election?
Very confident.
These actions that you've undertaken, saying, I don't need to know that bit, stay away from me, these conversations on the tapes, and the fact you only ended the relationship with Daryl Maguire once you've been to a private hearing by ICAC, they indicate that you're a leader who's not about right or wrong, but whether or not she'll be caught.
I'm sorry, but I strongly refute that.
Given the corruption Daryl Maguire has now admitted to, do you expect he'll be stripped of his parliamentary pension?
Oh, look, that's a matter for the various bodies. There's a committee that looks at those matters, and I'll leave it to them.
And that wasn't legislation you yourself introduced in 2017?
Absolutely, and I expect everybody to act in accordance with that legislation.
When you said you weren't surprised at how much the land deal would brief on the phone call, didn't any part of you say this could end badly?
Look, I just ask you to refer to my public evidence, which was in full view over the course of 6 hours on Monday.
Do you still think it's okay for MPs to lobby for land deals while they're in the Parliament?
Look, I've always said that I am more than happy to consider arrangements that increase the accountability with which MPs are held, and I'm always happy to consider recommendations, whether they're from integrity bodies or from members of Parliament, to further put restrictions on the activities of MPs.
You didn't want to know because he hadn't been appropriate with his disclosures, did you?
I'm sorry, I've already answered that question.
You didn't want to know, Premier, did you?
That is not correct.
Have any of your
You
colleagues-
said you didn't want to know, Premier.
That is not correct,
have
sorry.
any of your colleagues over the past 48 hours suggested that you should consider?
No, can I say, I just want to thank the support that I've received from the community and also from my colleagues, which is deeply appreciated.
What's the test for you to resign?
When I've done something wrong.
In your assessment, how do you think that the ICAC has handled the hearings this week, given it's very sensitive to your private life?
Oh, look, that's a matter for them, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment whilst the hearings are still going.
Did anyone from your office ask Natalie Ward this morning to ask a question of the Commissioner in relation to the accidental leaking of the transcript?
I'm not aware of what's gone on this morning.
Has your office not told you they asked Natalie Ward to ask that question?
Honestly, I'm not aware. I actually have been preoccupied with COVID this morning, made sure I got a briefing, and also made sure that I was advised about the 3 aircraft that are landing in New South Wales from New Zealand, which is a big deal today.
Did you ever ask Daryl Maguire whether he had disclosed all his business dealings? Seeing that there was a line, did you ever ask that question?
Again, that was in the public evidence on
If this
Monday.
scandal came out before the last election, would you have won?
I can't look into a crystal ball.
Premier, last night the upper house passed an SO52 requiring yourself and the Treasurer to release private emails or emails from your private account relating to ICAC and Strong Communities Fund. Have you conducted business to your recollection of those two issues via your private email account?
Do you mean the internal working
The
email?
one that was referred to as
Oh, that's actually an official work email, which hundreds of people send me things on. I'm always happy to comply to SO52s. I get them every week.
Why didn't you put the meeting with Mr Aller in your diary?
It wasn't a meeting.
What was it? Can you explain what it was to us?
Oh, well, there's been plenty of public evidence about those issues, so please look at the evidence on Monday and also subsequently since that time.
Have you been asked to provide any further evidence to ICAC in response to Daryl Maguire's evidence?
No.
Do you expect to be called back?
No.
Premier, do you understand why people are questioning your claim that you didn't turn a blind eye? How can the public still have trust in you, given you said that you didn't want to know?
Because the public know that every day that I've been in this job, I've done my job with the highest level of integrity, working hard for the people of this great state.
How do they know that?
Because they know me. They've seen me.
Because you tell them?
No, it's what they feel and appreciate. I'm not going to tell...
Why is ICAC looking into you if you're such a person of integrity?
Excuse me, they are not. I'm there as a witness.
All the questions are about you.
No, they've made very clear to me that I'm a witness. I've not done anything wrong and I've not been accused of any wrongdoing.
Who's made that clear to you?
Well, I'll leave it at that.
Who in ICAC has made that clear to you?
ICAC can take some time to deliver its reports. Are you concerned there may be a cloud over your premiership until that report is finally delivered?
Not at all, because I've not been accused of any wrongdoing.
Why are they asking so many questions about you and Mr Maguire then?
I think it's appropriate in the public interest to get to the bottom of all issues, and I don't begrudge them for making sure that they've got as much information as they need to make sure that people who do the wrong thing are punished, and I appreciate that.
You can't explain how you endorse this behaviour by Mr Maguire. Nowhere in any of these press conferences, Premier, and I've known you a long time, are you explaining how you could say yes to someone doing land deals and getting a cut on the side?
With all due respect, I've answered those questions both in the public hearing and also at press conferences during the week, and I maintain my position.
Premier, if you think it's in the public interest to get to the bottom of these issues, then why did you say you didn't want to know about Daryl Maguire's dodgy dealings?
Again, I've answered those questions in the public hearing and subsequently, and we also have to respect the process, even though the process let me down a bit this week in terms of putting out personal information about me. We have to have confidence in the process. We have to let the ICAC do their job, and we have to make sure that we provide full opportunity for them to do their job without this commentary which only detracts from the job they need to do.
How do you react to polls that your popularity may have grown during this period?
I don't look too much at that, but all I can say is I've just felt completely humbled and overwhelmed by the support that I've received and the messages people have sent me, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank people for those because it's meant a lot.
You stood down Don Harwin because you said perception is everything. Why don't you stand aside until the end of this inquiry?
Because I've done nothing wrong.
So we're just supposed to believe you?
Well, I've done nothing wrong.
Last question.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone.